another Teams webinar. We're super excited about this particular one because it talks about platform, a feature, and a new path going forward that we've been working on very hard, and we're really excited to see what our customers do with it. So this isn't specifically to GCC High, but it's actually also to DoD clouds, or to the DoD cloud, pardon me. So keep that in mind as we go forward. I believe Rocky may speak to the availability of how it'll be in DoD, but right now everything we were talking about is available immediately in GCC High, just as of a few weeks ago. Moving forward, next slide. These will be your speakers today. There are plenty of I'm actually, my name is Christian Burke. I work in Teams Engineering. I have been helping deliver this effort, but I'm not the smart person in the room. The people that are on the call are. So we have Eunice Lowe, Anish Gupta, Shah Massoud, Rima Reyes, and Rocky Quach, and all of them will be delivering their different pieces. I'm actually going to start on mine, and let's see, where are we? Slide 3. Oop. Please, somebody. What do we have? There we go, agenda. I'm actually going to focus first on some of the changes we've made in the architecture, and most importantly around security and creating apps, and how we are changing what our customers do to enable connections outside of our boundaries. So we'll talk about that in a few moments as well. Rima and Rocky are going to talk about the Teams platform overview all up, and how we can think through low code and no code solutions from within there. Anush is going to go a whole lot more nerdy. He's done some really incredible work in helping get this rolling, and he'll talk specifically about how bots are enabled and how they work. And then Eunice is actually going to do some really cool stuff. She's got a lot of time to spend here on today's call, and she will discuss, actually walk you through how to create one. So that's a really good one for many of you who are first timers at getting this done. Really keep an eye on Eunice's presentation, because it's super critical to just dipping your feet in the water and just seeing how it works. And I've had so many customers asking me how to make it happen. And this is actually, I've been pointing out people to say, join the webinar, because you're going to see exactly how to get started. So with that, we are also answering Q&A throughout the session. There's already been a couple posts in there, and every one of us that's not talking will be answering these questions as we go along. But if there's time for some questions afterwards, then we'll go ahead and take a little bit of time to do that. So pausing, and off we go. Let's go ahead and give this a run. The next slide, there we go, guidelines for app architecture. So next slide after that is this one. So I just drew this thing up. It's really cute. You have the users on the left have been able to join teams in GCC High for a very long time, and that's pretty cool. And your on-prem network can either deliver the identity up into the M365 platform, or you are all fully in the cloud, which for all of you GCC High users, I highly doubt that. So you've got some hybrid architecture in some way. And this is the way it works. You host applications on your premises, and you have tons of data sources down there as well. In many cases, most of you probably have an Azure Gov subscription already, and you're already connecting into whether they're containers or data sources or things like that, or other services that are provided in Azure. You're doing all of that, but what you have not been able to do is connect any of those services over into Teams. And so for the last 9-10 months, we've been busting our butts to get that going, and that's what that green star's for. And as of 3-4 weeks ago, we now can say that you are able to do that. There's tons of documentation out there. We have a blog that was posted a handful of weeks ago as well by Sean, and that talks through exactly what's available, what's working, and how you can get started. And it also talks about how to join this webinar. So hopefully you're here because of that, but there's plenty to look for. On the right-hand side, connecting to third-party vendors in the past has only been available from your on-premises network. In other words, we did not allow the bot service or app proxy or Teams to connect directly to a third-party vendor. And if you go to the next slide, it kind of shows that. And what we found in our development was those red lines are exactly what our customers wanted. And so through tons of backroom negotiations and so on with our legal team and so on, we've actually changed the way our customers are allowed to access third-party vendors now. And if you go to the next slide, that's exactly what it looks like. So we've now, in addition to allowing teams to connect to just Azure Websites.us sites and or other services in Azure, they are now able to connect to third-party vendor applications, and that's great. And in fact, your bot service or your app proxy can also be used to connect directly out to an external URL and not be forced only into your basically your Azure domain, which includes your on-premises network, or over to the M365 network. So this is a really big, huge change. And if you go to the next slide, this is why, because we are fundamentally shifting the decision-making power over to you. And we want to make that really, really clear that with just those checkboxes on the left and the right, you will be allowing your applications or your users to access applications outside of what we would have policed in the past. And that's really important that you understand that. So the IT admins have the ability to do this as they create these bots and apps and so on. And you want to make sure that as you go forward, you put this into your compliance, into your reviews, into your legal and compliance and so on, and make sure that you understand that by clicking this checkbox, you could potentially expose yourself to a failure of an audit. And not that I want to go down the negative, but it's really important to understand the importance of this, is that we are no longer doing this for you. We're allowing you to make your own decisions. So with that, actually, every single customer that we worked with within our preview in getting all this going, this was the biggest breakthrough we had. They were really excited about this, and so we hope you are too. So with that, it allows you to turn on a whole new world of applications and a whole new world of considering Teams as a platform. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Rima and Rocky, who will start walking you through the rest. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Rocky Quatch here. I also have Rima. Say hi, Rima.
Hi, folks. How are you?
So our next topic will be, we're going to start from low and then going to a much deeper dive. Rima and I will cover the low code, no code version of it. And then before we kick into it, let's go do a quick overview of what the Teams means as a platform. First of all, if we break it down into capabilities, this is what Teams platform can do, where you would be able to surface your app inside of a tab, right? You can create a chatbot where you're able to have conversations and having more intelligent processes inside of your day-to-day, and then all the way out to meeting extensions. If we go down to UI constructs, it's where you're able to view and interact with your content. Adaptive cards is one of the more used ones, where you're able to interact with the information that you need. And then lastly, if we cover into the entry points, it's where you want it to surface, because the app, it needs to live where your end user needs it to be, whether it's in a personal app, right? Or inside of a Teams, inside of a channel, where it's in a more collaborative fashion. Rima, anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add was just for folks listening and watching, pay attention to adaptive cards. We are investing a lot here, and adaptive cards are going to be really the easy way for developers to bring live rich content into Teams apps in multiple different areas of Teams. So if anything, like if you take anything out of this whole entire slide, just go look up adaptive cards, pay attention, and go see what they can do. And that is always evolving too. So just take a look at those. All right, so we're gonna go to the first demo video. So this demo video, I actually showcase a no-code solution that you too can build in. We wanted to highlight how to use the power of Teams platform with other M365 services in GCC High to automate a very common scenario where users are signing up for a training course and all new signups will be posted into a Teams channel, and where the training leads can then track and also collaborate on each new signup. Here I have a channel in Teams and GCC High where all of the training leads are working together and where I want all those new sign-up notifications to go as soon as they occur. Now we're also going to have a form, and let me show you that. And this is the form that I've built to capture the signups. As you can see, I've got first name, last name, email address, and also the user can essentially select a course that they want to sign up for. Forms is great in GCC High because it allows data to be captured in a centralized and very easy way, and it's already integrated into the rest of M365. Once we have this form complete, we want to connect the form to be automatically posted all those results into Teams. And how do we do that? We use Power Automate in GCC High. So let me show you what that looks like. Here's a workflow that I've already created. Feel free to capture a screenshot because I know sometimes Power Automate can be a little difficult to start, but once you get a hang of it, it is the best and most awesome thing ever. I use it even in my personal life. Here in this scenario, we have the Forms connector where it's actually bringing that training registration form into the workflow. And then we want to post a message in a chat or channel. For this scenario, we're posting in a channel. And as you can see, I'm using the user context here. So what's happening behind the scenes is that it's actually using bots to automate getting that new sign up and posting that new sign up into that Teams channel. I also have some nice formatting here on the bottom where, again, I'm not a developer, but I do know a little bit about HTML. And here I just have some paragraph breaks, some things that are bold, and some, kind of more highlighted things to be a little bit more popping, to the eye whenever things do get posted. I'm going to go back over to the forms and I'm going to show you what this looks like for this scenario. I'm going to click on the preview button, which is great if you're, an admin or somebody who wants to do this and test it out for the first time. This wouldn't necessarily be the case for when your users actually fill out the form. You can share a direct link to the form so that they can just go directly to a page like this, and that way they don't have to see, the behind the scenes that you and I are doing today. So I'm going to put in my first name, put in my last name, and the email address that I have here. And then I'm going to select one of these courses. So I'm going to select the Security and Compliance course at Wednesday at 1 p.m. and I'm going to hit Submit. Now, if I go back over to Teams, you'll notice right away, I'll get that posting right there that somebody new has just signed up for this course. And what's great is that I can now talk to the rest of my training leads about the person who's just signed up, making sure they have everything they need to get ready for that course. Thanks for watching.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anush Gupta, software engineer at Microsoft Teams. In this section, we'll cover bots in GCC High. Specifically, we'll talk about what are bots and how to get started with a basic bot in GCC High. So what is a bot? Well, also referred to as a chat bot or a conversational bot, it allows users to interact with your application in a natural and comprehensive language. It is one of the most powerful capabilities in a Teams application. And you can interact with the bot in a personal context and collaborative context, such as one-to-one chats, group chats, and teams or channels. Bots also power messaging extensions, such as search and action commands, and also help you unfurl links. So let's look at how you can create a basic bot application in GCC High. Let's look at how you can create a basic bot application. So first, we'll create an Azure bot in Azure Gov. Then we'll connect the Azure bot to a Teams channel. We'll configure a sample app for GCC High environment, and then we'll add the application to Teams and see how that works. Let's see how this works live. You'll notice we're in a Azure curve. This is a different endpoint. So we create a resource. We'll look for an Azure bot resource. Click on create. And then we enter a unique handle. Let's enter eco bot demo for this one. I'll create a new resource group. And then we'll choose an application type, which for this demo, I'll select a multi-tenant. And then we're going to create a new app that's going to back this bot. Validation pass, let's create this. It'll take a couple of seconds to provision this resource. Once done, we'll go to the resource and we'll connect this to Teams channel. Go to channels, select Teams, and then save it. You'll have to agree to the publication terms and privacy statements. Next, we'll configure the messaging endpoint. This is the endpoint where all the activities to your bot will reach out to. In my case, I am going to route that to my local machine through ngrok. And this Microsoft App ID is the bot ID, which we will later use in the manifest. Let's create a new app secret, which we will again use in our web app. Make sure you copy this value and save it in some file. Also make sure you copy the application ID. And now let's go to our local project, EcoBot. It's a basic bot that echo backs the messages. So let's configure the app ID and app secret that we just created. And then you will notice that we have a bunch of other configurations which are specific to Azure Gov Cloud and M365 Gov environment. Let's run this project. And then here we have the EcoBot, which echoes back the message and sends a hello and welcome message when a new member is added. So yes, we have the project running locally. I'll connect it through ngrok to my local machine. And then we'll also prepare a manifest. We'll update the bot ID. Again, we'll go back to the application ID we saved earlier. This is your bot ID in your manifest. We'll prepare the application package. And now let's go to Teams GCC High environment. You notice this endpoint is different from the commercial. Go to App Store, upload an app for my org. Choose the application package you just created, and then consent to the terms and conditions. And here we have the app. Let's add it in personal scope and send it a message. So this was a simple demo where we created a basic bot by registering an Azure bot in Azure Curve. We connected that bot to Teams channel. We configured a sample project to point to GCC High environment, and then we added the application to Teams. And that's how simple it is to get started. You can also refer to the docs on this tech. You can learn more about bots in Microsoft Teams. Through the first link, you can also go through different samples we have to explore how you can proactively send messages or how you can exchange information with users through adaptive cards and more. And we also have documentation on how to configure a bot for GCC High. So let's take a look at the documentation for configuring bot framework bot for US Gov customers. Prerequisites, as we saw, you need to have an account in Azure Gov Cloud, and then you need to have a local project that we will configure to make sure we connect to Azure Gov environment, and then make sure that you're using an appropriate SDK version, which is 4.1.14 or later. There are some changes. For instance, you would want to make sure that you're using a cloud adapter or a class that derives from cloud adapter. And we have samples for C# and JavaScript that you can refer to for making those changes in your project. And then coming to the configuration changes, again, you see the channel service endpoint. These are all specific to Azure Gov environment. And we have the settings for JavaScript and C# project. And if you authenticate users to your bot using auth connections, again, there is a change where the redirect URI is different for GCC High. So you'd want to make sure when you're adding authentication to your bot, the redirect URL matches the one that we have documented here. In the next section, Yunus will talk about advanced ways of creating bots, and then also talk about tools that will help you debug, develop, and deploy your applications to Azure Cloud.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eunice, and I'm here to talk a little bit about how to set up your tooling environment to start developing, and also some of the things you can do when you're developing for teams in GCC High. Up on my screen, you'll see I have Visual Studio Code open. If you don't have it already, this is free to download and use. Links later on in the deck. To get started, I will need to install a couple of extensions. Please note that Teams Developer Studio and App Studio are not available for GCC High, so we will be using a couple of different tools here. To get started with extensions in Visual Studio Code, I'm going to go to View, and I will click on Extensions. This is going to show me a list of extensions that are available to me in the marketplace. And right now, as of today, you can use the Azure extensions, which do support the government clouds. If you don't see these already, you can search for this just by clicking in the search bar and typing in Azure. I do recommend that you start with the Azure account extension, which we'll need today, your Azure App Service, right here, as well as the Teams Toolkit, which does provide some accelerated frameworks for scaffolding your app, although you will have to make some manual changes to make this deployable in GCC High. Now that we've installed these extensions, we do need to make one more change to allow these extensions to connect to a government cloud. I am going to go ahead and click over on my Settings tab, over here. There we go. I'm going to click on Settings. Open up Settings. And under Extensions, I will see my installed extensions and the settings associated with them. Under Azure Configuration, you will notice actually that I have a drop-down menu here that points to different clouds. This defaults to Azure Cloud. For Azure Gov, you will need to switch this to Azure US Government. Once all of that is set up, I will notice I have my Azure extension over here. When I click on this, I will see the resources in my Azure Gov subscription and be able to deploy my code to the app service of my choice. I'm going to walk through a hypothetical situation for a sensor alert. Here I have an application set up that listens for an alert. Over here, I just have a listening endpoint, but if you have an existing process that already generates alerts, all you have to do is get it to go ahead and send a post to this endpoint. Once I do, my bot goes ahead and sends me a proactive notification that tells me a sensor needs replacing. Within the adaptive card, I can add several options. I can allow the person to open an external website, like so. I can bring up what's called a task module, which is a dialog box that opens up within your Teams client itself. I can submit some information with an action.submit to a backend service. Over here, I am just talking to a blank listener. Or I can give the user some options within the card itself to put some validated input, and again, send this to a backend service. Let's take a look at how we implement each of these things. Over in Visual Studio Code, I actually started with a pre-built bot builder sample, which is available on GitHub. Again, links later on in the deck, but here you can see the bot builder sample GitHub repo, and I'm using a sample 16 for proactive messages. You can download the repository and extract this to a local development environment. Once I have this extracted, if I take a look at my file explorer, I'll notice my files are unpacked over here. Please note that the changes that Anuj mentioned to customize the bot for GCC High environments do need to be implemented, including the additional environmental entries. And please make sure that you're using the cloud adapter as well. There is a document that walks you through the changes you need to make, titled Deploy Bots Azure Gov. Again, if you follow this article, use the cloud adapter and add the appropriate configuration entries. We can get this bot ready for use in Azure Gov. Okay. In order to customize this further from the default sample, I have gone ahead and created an interactive adaptive card, which I named widget card. And the widget card is defined as a JSON file, which allows you to create the interactive experience and insert things like images and video. In order to get an easy way to create an adaptive card, I've used the Adaptive Card Designer, which is available from the Teams developer portal or from the Adaptive Card Studio. Again, links in the deck later. This gives me a drag and drop interface to create my card as I see fit. Once I'm done, I can copy the card payload and drop it in my code. A couple other things that I've done to the default template code as well. I have added a couple notes to the listener. Here is where you can add some logic to authenticate an incoming alert or do some validation to see if the alert is valid to send to your target groups. Also within my adaptive card JSON, I have embedded a base64 image, and I can add actions such as bringing up an external URL, a task module, and to toggle the visibility of additional elements. Once I'm happy with my code and how it works, I'm going to go ahead and try and deploy it to my target app service. That's where my Azure extension is going to come in handy. I have my Azure extension. I have pointed it to the correct environment and the correct app service that I want to deploy to. I'm going to go right click on this and just choose deploy the web app. It's going to prompt me which code I want to upload. Gonna pick that, confirm it, and I'm gonna go get a cup of coffee while this runs. Once this is done, my code will be deployed to my app service, and I will be able to go over to my app service, take a look at it, and do a couple tests. So I hope you enjoyed this demo.
Yep, we've got just a little lag between the content and the audio, so let's let my slides catch up real quick. There we go. So we looked at some basic tools for scaffolding and deploying your app. So we've got how to create an app, a couple more tools that will be useful to help you develop Teams apps. While these tools are geared for a commercial audience, the guidance is still applicable to tabs and bots, as well as the Graph API, which are available in GCC High today. A little asterisk there on some limitations. For more guidance on how to use a tab or a bot in a Teams app, we have the Microsoft Teams UI kit published by Microsoft, which is available for free in the Figma community. And that's where I recommend you get it, because they do publish updates regularly. It includes the components that make up a Teams app and best practice guidance for how to structure an app, content and components that can be used within an app. Tabs can be added in the personal and channel context. A personal app is exactly that, personal to the user. So it shows up as an app in the left-hand pane, and it isn't connected to an existing team or channel. Compare and contrast this with the channel tab, which you'll see coming up next. Channel tabs are added to channels within a team. I do want to clarify that while apps are installed within the context of a team, meaning once you install an app, it becomes automatically available every channel within the team, again, some asterisks there. Tabs that are part of an installed app can be added or removed to specific channels in any combination. In some scenarios, you can even do multiple tab instances from the same app in a single channel. For example, when you need multiple documents or multiple views from the same app in the same channel. The toolkit also includes best practices on how to use a tab or a bot for a better user experience. It's got some really useful do's and don'ts, quite a few of them actually. Here's a sample of the guidance for navigation best practices for a tab, which is to use a tab when you need to address a specific need and to limit the set of tasks and data to what is relevant to the team, group, or the app focus in the case of a personal app. Here's another example of a don't, which is actually one of my favorites. Don't overload a tab app with multi-level navigation and complex interactions. This not only leads to information overload, but when you get further down the line and you have to accommodate different screen sizes and modalities, it tends to cause some breakage and additional code work for your team as well. Similar guidance is available for bots, content, and iconography. Again, just a couple examples from the UI toolkit. Strongly recommend you go check it out. Here's one for multi-turn interactions with a bot. And super important call out as well, proactive notifications, which we saw in our hypothetical scenario. There are two ways to do proactive notifications, one with the activity feed, and one with a message from a bot that can add message your target group or user. Depending on your scenario and your flow, you may want to use one or the other. You'll also find references to basic UI components, such as, but not limited to, pickers, both people picker and other kinds of pickers, input buttons, input fields, buttons, toggles, and dialogues, which we already saw actually. these components are actually available as part of a pre-built library called Fluent UI, which allows you to import the controls into a React tab app for immediate use. Specifically for Teams, Teams uses the React North Star component library. Teams later on in the deck, but there are actually two different versions of Fluent. If you go look right now, for Teams, you'll want the North Star library. There are announcements about unifying those two libraries coming soon, but for now, just be aware that you do want to prefer the North Star libraries. You can use the Fluent UI library by importing it as a dependency of your app. Quick screenshot of the quick start guide from the link for Fluent Library. You'll see it in a little bit. But if you visit the link, you'll find both the beginner's tutorial as well as detailed developer information on the components. So something for everyone in all range of skill sets there. Lastly, I'm going to touch a little bit on the Microsoft Graph API. It is available in GCC High with an asterisk. Not all functionalities work. There is a docs article, again, links later in that, labeled Microsoft Graph features available in the Microsoft Cloud for US government. And here are the endpoints that are available as of today in June 2022. I also went ahead and put a note in there. A lot of documentation you see is targeted at commercial audiences. If you're trying to work in the Gov cloud, please make sure you use the Gov specific endpoint, which is https graph.microsoft.us. As promised, here are links. We will make these available to attendees. In a little bit. There we go. And up next, I'll talk a little bit about managing your apps once you've built them and tested them and are ready to deploy them. Again, a lot of documentation you see out there is targeted at commercial. This is from a GCC High tenant. If you look at your Teams Admin Center, you will notice you do have permissions policies and setup policies, but you do not have the Manage Apps blade today. First up, we'll take a look at the app setup policies. App setup policies are used to deploy apps to your users, and they don't control access users may or may not have. If you click on the purple highlight of the named policy, you'll notice you'll have two pre-built ones, first line worker and global. But if you click on the purple highlight where the name is, you'll have a chance to edit the policy. The global policy is what everyone gets if they're not explicitly assigned a different policy. Quick look at editing the global policy here. You can click on Add Apps to force the app to be visible for any user that receives the global policy. Quick look at the side panel where you can search for an app to pin by name, or you can search based on what's already available in an app permission policy. I went ahead and searched for an Edit Power Apps, which then lights up the Add button at the bottom of that side panel, and clicking Add actually implements that change. Don't forget to click Save to apply your changes. Okay. You can, if none of the pre-built policies suit, you can go ahead and add a app setup policy. Again, you see the interface is going to be really similar to what you're used to. The biggest change there is instead of editing an existing policy, you'll see two lines where you can add a name and a description for your policy right there. Boop. I'm going to switch gears and talk about app permissions policies next. App permissions policies are different because they govern the level of access that your users have to an app. Same thing here. You have the option to add a new custom policy or edit an existing policy just by clicking on the two circled areas over there. If you choose to add a new policy, again, you'll see that interface where you'll be able to give it a name and description. I do recommend giving it a descriptive name. Again, 2 options there. You can control whether users have access to Microsoft apps, which are one-party apps, as well as any custom apps you've already published to the Team Store, as Anush showed you before. You notice that 3P apps is missing from this view, and that's because they're not available in GCC High today. Once you have your policies set up the way you like them, you can go ahead and assign them to individual users from the Setup and Permissions Policies tabs just by highlighting the policy you want to assign, clicking Assign Users, again, circled there in the right. Search for the user you want to assign it to, and again, just which lights up the blade, click Apply. Again, similar experience that you'll see over in the App Permissions Policies blade as well. You have one other option for assigning policies, and that's from the Manage Users experience. Click on Manage Users and look up that user. If you scroll down over on the far right, there we go. You'll see a policies location, and again, you will see your app's permissions policy and your app setup policy that's assigned to the user. You can click on the purple name to change it. And again, don't forget to save your changes. If you do want to go ahead and apply this in bulk, I do recommend looking at PowerShell for management, since these do have to be assigned on a per user basis. One last call out here, over in the top right corner in app permissions policies, you'll see org-wide app settings. Be aware that org-wide settings override or supersede what you have in your app's permissions policies, so it impacts what you can and cannot assign when you do your search. So be aware that that is, needs to be configured as well. With that said, I am going to go ahead and open up for Q&A. If people want to come, post your chats, post your questions in chat. Do we have any interesting questions in the chat?
There's the one about Power Virtual Agents. Its availability.
In GCC High or DoD. Who wants to take that one?
I actually answered that one a while ago, but they are not available yet in GCC High, and actually, Power Virtual Agents for Teams. In GCC, they are available, but not for Teams. They are currently being evaluated as how as the demand comes in. So please get with your account teams if you feel the need, because everybody's vote counts, and the feedback we get from our customers is super important to make sure we prioritize higher. It is under consideration, and we're hoping, we personally on this team are hoping they come out in the next few quarters, but we would ask you generally and specifically look on public roadmap and look in your message center. We've been working really hard on making that very accurate. And if it shows up in public roadmap, you can at least have some sort of a timeline as to when, and then message center would help you prepare for when it does come.
Around the developer portal, that is the Teams developer portal available in GCC High? And unfortunately, the answer is no. Although, again, it is available if you have a commercial test tenant. And if you use the tools within the developer portal to create an adaptive card or a Teams manifest, you can copy the payload. You will still need to adjust the manifest with the appropriate values and endpoints for GCC High.
Hey, Eunice, now that you answered that question, I had answered a question earlier when they said somebody asked what languages are available to do your development. And while I put in C# and Node.js, there were others asking about C++ and so on. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. The code samples are available in C# and TypeScript in most cases, as well as Node.js. If they're, most of the code samples are hosted in GitHub with open feedback. So if you feel there is a need for additional language support, feel free to click the submit feedback button, make that request directly as the code sample team.
Yeah, and in terms of development, there's no restriction on what language you can use to build your backend service. Say you're integrating a bot in your team's application. The only information that is important to us is where do the messages go when someone tries to reach out to your bot. So you have to configure a messaging endpoint where all these messages will be posted. What language stack you use to build that service, there's no restriction on that. However, if you're using bot SDK, which makes your life easier if you want to integrate with bot messages, we have the SDK available in C# and a few other languages. C++ might not be on the list, but that still doesn't stop you from developing a backend service that can handle bot messages in C++.
Do you have a question around Python bots? Our developers need Python bots. Just to further elaborate on Anusha's point, you can develop your bot really in any language that you need. There are some pre-built SDKs. There are Azure libraries for Python. I believe there is an SDK for Python for the bot framework. So you can go ahead and use that if you do need to develop using Python as well. We have one more question. Are there any specific communities or events for Microsoft federal and gov contractors to corral around the needs? I've seen events before and found a federal business apps GitHub by Steve Winward, and I'm looking for any additional resources out there available. I'll kind of open that out to the larger group. Christian, Rima, Rocky?
That's a very good question. I know while we do have executive and IT focused group, not necessarily groups, but we do have roundtables once every quarter or so, or once every month in some cases. I don't know that we have anything developer focused. That's a really good idea. Since we just launched it a few weeks ago, it would make sense that we didn't have it before, but it certainly makes sense that we should think about something going forward. So maybe we'll take that back and find a way to get something off and running, because having sat in the passenger seat along with these fine people the last 9-10 months, we also see the opportunities going forward, and building a community around that would be great. I would think in the GCC High and DoD community, the only thing is around sensitivity about people joining roundtables like that. In the executive realm, that's much easier to do. But maybe we could try and do that anonymously or something that's just more community focused, that doesn't really identify companies in the sensitivities and work in GCC High. That's usually a big issue. So yeah, we'll take that back and we'll think that through, and hopefully we come back with something really soon. Sounds really valuable. Thanks.
I did want to add though, we have Sarah Gilbert actually, who's kind of on this call. She leads our government focused tech communities. Oh, she's off mute. So Sarah, do you want to talk about really quick?
Yes, so we have the public sector tech community, and in fact, after this is all done, we are going to upload a follow-up blog article with the recording of this embedded, and on our public sector tech community blog.
Did we have a last minute question comment? It would be great to have a session to which we can invite our developers, non-admins, so that they can hit the ground running and without an Azure admin, non-developer blocking their development. Any comments from the larger group on that?
So to Emily's question, We did have a federal hackathon, I think, last quarter. But if there are sessions like that that's being requested, please let your account team know that these are some of the sessions or hackathons that you're looking forward to, and then specifically around the asks. For example, how they had Power Apps, or if we're talking about specifically around bots. If there's enough interest, maybe we can encourage some of our folks to come out and help support those hackathons.
I appreciate it. I particularly appreciate the presenters, and I'll be editing the video and sending it out along with some of the links that we've shared in chat as well in an email to all registered users. Feel free to forward within your organization so we get more people taking advantage of the Teams platform in GCC High and DoD.